Hello and welcome to Sonic Lore, History of Mobius. Last time, I retold the story of how Tails became smart in Sonic's magical adventure. Now, it's time for the story of Sonic's wedding and his battle against King Gong. Sonic's first adventure began with him and his friends celebrating Robotnik's defeat with a group photo. The Freedom Fighters couldn't believe that they had won the war against Robotnik, causing Antoine to question what the future held for them now. 6 months later, Sonic and Sally were preparing for their wedding. Meanwhile, Antoine was jealous that Sally was marrying Sonic. Later, everyone attended Sonic and Sally's wedding. Sonic said he wished that Robotnik could see them now. Unbeknownst to Sonic and Co., Robotnik could see them. Robotnik was watching the Freedom Fighters from a holographic glass dome. He said that it was his most fiendish plot to date. He explained to his badniks how he captured the Freedom Fighters. To start, he lured them to Sleepy Hollow under false pretenses. Then, he filled the area with sleeping gas to knock out Sonic and his friends. Finally, Robotnik took them to Robotropolis and placed their bodies in containment vessels. Crabmeat asked his master why they didn't dispose of the Freedom Fighters. Robotnik told Crabmeat he had a more evil and fun plan for the group. Robotnik explained to Crabmeat that he placed the Freedom Fighters' minds in a virtual reality connected to his main computer. He planned to leave the Freedom Fighters in a world where their fondest wishes and wildest dreams would come true, thus making them never want to leave. Robotnik then moved on to activating his war machines. He said the machines would roll over the face of Mobius and crush anyone in their path. Those who survived would be roboticized. Robotnik then left the room to watch his plan play out. Meanwhile, Sonic and Sally's wedding was about to end, but Sonic suddenly turned into a janitor, and Antoine had taken Sonic's place as the groom. Suddenly, the environment started changing as Sonic said there was something wrong. Antoine said everything was what he'd hoped for after the scene changed again. Suddenly, Uncle Chuck appeared with a present and congratulated Sonic on his wedding. Sonic questioned how his uncle's return was possible. Chuck revealed to him that he was in virtual reality. After the surroundings changed again, Uncle Chuck pointed out that Sonic looked confused. Sonic listed everything wrong that had been happening and demanded answers. Once Uncle Chuck answered Sonic's questions, Sonic understood that he and his friends had fallen for one of Robotnik's traps. Sonic tested out the virtual world by summoning a terminal. He then accessed it to see what Robotnik was up to in the real world. Sonic was horrified to see Robotnik's war machines flattening Mobius. However, he was conflicted since he didn't know if it was right to force his friends to leave such a peaceful world. He also didn't want to leave his uncle and dog, causing him to question what to do. Chuck encouraged Sonic by telling him that he already knew what to do. Sonic agreed with Chuck and started hacking Robotnik's main computer. Meanwhile, Robotnik was shocked when he saw his war machines suddenly reverse course despite not giving them the order. Suddenly, Robotnik heard someone's voice coming from his monitor. Sonic appeared on it and told Robotnik he was now controlling his war machines. Sonic revealed he was sending the machines to Robotropolis and gave Robotnik an ultimatum: free the Freedom Fighters or be flattened along with the city. Left with no choice, Robotnik freed Sonic's friends. After regaining their freedom, Sally asked where Sonic was. Sonic told Sally not to worry and had the war machines crash into each other. He then jumped out of the monitor and escaped Robotropolis. Robotnik was mad that his plan had failed, but claimed the war would be his. He then ordered Uncle Chuck and Mutsky to clean up. Meanwhile, Sonic met up with his friends. Sally said she feared Sonic would stay behind in virtual reality, but Sonic said he wouldn't want to live there on Robotnik's terms. Tails then asked him about Uncle Chuck. Sonic promised he would eventually get him back. Sometime later, Robotnik slammed his desk as he questioned how Sonic was always one step ahead of him. He then said they needed to track down the head of the Freedom Fighters' Secret Intelligence Division. Snibbly asked his uncle why they needed to do that. Robotnik replied that his best plans had failed too often, meaning that the Freedom Fighters had inside help. He figured that there had to be a mole in their midst, and then handed Snively and Crabmeat a shovel to dig him out. Later, Snively and Crabmeat captured an actual mole and strapped him to a table. Robotnik congratulated them on a job well done. He then ordered Snively to turn up the heat on the lights so he could get answers from the mole. Robotnik asked his captive who was the head of the Secret Intelligence Division. The mole replied that he was right. The mole's confusing answer caused Robotnik to scream out "what?", but the mole corrected him. Robotnik thought the mole knew nothing about what he wanted to know, but he did get an idea. He had the mole sent away and ordered his robots to bring him a large box. Robotnik opened the box to reveal his Wheel of Misfortune. He planned on using it to pick random schemes that Sonic would only know about once it was too late. Robotnik's first plan was to rob an undersea bank. He sent Coconuts and Jaws to obtain the money. However, when Coconuts opened the door to the vault, he found a note that instructed him to look behind him. Coconuts turned around and saw that the freedom fighters had cornered him and Jaws. Robotnik's next plan had Scratch and Grounder steal a painting from an art museum. Before they could get far, Sonic showed up. Sonic took the painting from them and flipped over their hover car. The hover car crashed into a toxic waste dump. Suddenly, a note appeared asking, "Who knows what evil lurked in the heart of Robotnik?" Robotnik's third plan had his minions plant an explosive on the hill. Suddenly, Sonic set off the detonator, causing the bomb to explode in the Badniks' faces. Another note appeared that said that the owls are not what they seem. Robotnik was frustrated that his Wheel of Misfortune wasn't working and the spy in his organization was taunting him with notes. He decided he had to deal with Sonic himself. Later, Sonic and Sally arrived at Casino Night Zone for a vacation. Sally asked Sonic if he wanted to play one of the slot games, but Sonic rejected the idea and said he was up for a game of cards. Sally said she couldn't help but feel they were being watched. Unbeknownst to Sonic and Sally, Robotnik was spying on them. Robotnik asked Crabmeat if he could turn up the volume, but Crabmeat said he couldn't since their new system had yet to be sound checked. Robotnik was disappointed and said they had to move ahead in the dark. Meanwhile, Sonic was handed a card by an owl robot. The card read "Duck," so Sonic did as it said and dodged a hat thrown at him. Sonic realized he had fallen into one of Robotnik's traps when he saw his attacker was one of his swap bots. The swap bot chopped at Sonic, but Sonic dodged. He ran around the swap bot until he gained enough charge to shock it. The move caused Sonic to become dizzy and he suddenly fell into a trap hole. When Sonic awoke, he was strapped to the Wheel of Misfortune and greeted by Robotnik. Robotnik gave Sonic an ultimatum: tell him the identity of the head of the Secret Intelligence or else he would have him eliminated. Sonic refused to answer Robotnik despite there being several lasers aimed at him. When the lasers shot at Sonic, the light suddenly went out. Robotnik quickly turned the lights on and was shocked that Sonic had escaped. Robotnik questioned how it was possible and then noticed a mounted camera behind the wheel. He realized the wheel had been sabotaged and was upset that he still didn't know the spy's identity. Later, Sonic and Sally met up with the leader of the Secret Intelligence at their headquarters. Sonic complimented Harvey Who on his plan to use Robotnik's wheel to spy on him. He also said that Harvey's robot disguise fooled even them. Sonic then asked Harvey a question: how many licks does it take to get to the center of a lollipop? Harvey replied that the information was classified, leaving Sonic dumbfounded. Some time passed, and Sonic enjoyed his day by playing ping pong by himself, which annoyed everyone else. Sonic was restless since Robotnik hadn't caused any trouble in a while. However, Sonic couldn't help but wonder what he was planning. Meanwhile, Robotnik and Snively were heading for a remote island. Once they landed, Robotnik had his swap bots carry him. Robotnik said that Sonic would never look for them on Skull Island, but it was where they needed to look. Robotnik also said he would engage Sonic in a fight once he found what he was looking for on the island. Crabmeat asked his master about what they were searching for. Robotnik replied they were hunting game and then pointed out a giant footprint. Snively asked Robotnik what kind of monster could leave such impressive impressions. Robotnik said that the footprints belonged to his son and then began to retell his son's origin. Years ago, when Robotnik was a young student, he created his first robot as a giant mechanical ape. The only thing his creation needed to be complete was a large amount of energy. Luckily for him, an electric storm was passing by Hill Valley. The storm hit his mechanical creation and granted it life. Robotnik was overjoyed that he had succeeded in his project. Unfortunately, his robot went on a rampage and escaped. Robotnik said his son's first steps into the world were awkward ones and could be seen in several places. Robotnik searched far and wide for his son, but could never find him. After Robotnik finished retelling his son's origin story, Snively asked his uncle how he knew his creation was on the island. Robotnik showed Snively that he had dozens of satellite reconnaissance photos. He then told Snively there were signs of his creation's current location, such as climactic shifts and rising tides. Crabmeat interrupted his master when he heard some loud noises. Robotnik was ecstatic to hear the loud gong sound coming closer to them. Snively thought it was an earthquake, but Robotnik corrected him. He then introduced everyone to King Gong. Robotnik told Snively to bring out the cameras so that he could capture his reunion with Gong. Snively feared Gong's reaction to the cameras, but Robotnik told him that Gong was just hungry. However, Crabmeat said that that's what they were afraid of. Robotnik told them not to worry and summoned his swap bots with a whistle. He had his swap bots bring in giant bananas since Gong had the mind of an ape. While Gong ate the bananas, Robotnik said he planned for him to devour Sonic. Back in Knothole, Sonic and Sally were getting ready for their picnic with their friends. Sonic said he hoped that Robotnik wouldn't crash the party. Sally reminded him that Robotnik had been missing for weeks, but Sonic said Robotnik had to be up to something. Meanwhile, Robotnik had Gong shipped to Robotropolis. Gong quickly consumed several boxes of bananas, causing Crabmeat to worry about what would happen if he ran out of food. Robotnik dismissed Crabmeat's concerns and reassured him that Gong was under his control as long as he was properly cared for and fed. However, Crabmeat informed his master that they were running out of bananas, so Robotnik sent Gong to destroy Sonic. Later in the Great Forest, the Freedom Fighters' picnic was interrupted by an earthquake caused by Gong's arrival. Gong tried to squash the group with his foot, but they managed to evade him. Sally angrily marched up to Gong and kicked him while complaining about his actions. At first, Gong was confused by Sally's reaction, but he immediately fell in love with her. Gong flicked Sonic away and grabbed Sally. Sonic recovered and headed back to save Sally. When Sonic returned, he met up with Tails and Antoine. Sonic asked him where Sally and Gong had gone, so Antoine told him what had happened. Sonic grabbed Antoine and headed for the tornado along with Tails. Meanwhile, Snively informed Robotnik that Gong was climbing the Mobius Trade Center. Robotnik grabbed Snively's binoculars and saw Gong climbing to the top with Sally in his hand. Once they reached the top, Sally asked Gong what he was planning. Gong pointed to the sunset, which made Sally compliment him, but she turned him down. Sonic soon arrived with Antoine flying the tornado and Tails on one of its wings. Sonic told Antoine to fly closer to Gong, but the ape immediately spotted them. Gong roared and swatted at Sonic. Sonic tried to attack Gong with a sonic spin, but he bounced off him. Sonic almost fell to his death, but Antoine saved him. Tails asked Sonic if he was okay. Sonic said he was, but pointed out that Gong was too tough to take on directly. Tails asked what they planned to do about Sally. Sonic replied he was changing his strategy. He then sent Tails to rescue Sally. Once Tails grabbed Sally from Gong's hand, Sonic busted out the Super Soaker. Sonic sprayed Gong, causing Gong to fall off the tower. Robotnik arrived just as Gong fell. He tried to save his creation, but it was too late. While Robotnik warned Gong, Sonic said he understood why Gong fell for Sally. Sometime later, the Freedom Fighters were fixing up an old barn for Sonic and Sally's wedding. Sally said the barn was the perfect place for their wedding, but Sonic was too busy making fun of Antoine for getting his leg tied up and hanging upside down. Sonic eventually helped out Antoine and gave him some advice. Bunny complained to Sally about Sonic and Antoine not taking things seriously, but Sally was used to it. Sally sighed and said she did agree to the wedding. She then told Bunny she wanted everything to be perfect. Unbeknownst to them, Motobug overheard them talking about the wedding. He hurried back to Robotropolis to report to Robotnik. Robotnik was playing darts when Crabmeat ran into the room with an urgent message from Motobug. Robotnik told Crabmeat to toss the message in the garbage, but Crabmeat insisted that his master read it. Robotnik read Motobug's message and was shocked to learn that Sonic and Sally were getting married. Robotnik refused to believe the report, but Crabmeat brought him a newspaper that officially announced it. Robotnik summoned Batbrain and ordered him to see if the wedding was truly happening. Meanwhile, Sonic asked Sally if she was okay with going through with the wedding. Sally replied that it was too late for them to back out now and reminded him that it was his idea in the first place. Sonic joked that it was her idea, causing her to accuse him of not taking things seriously. Sonic said he was, but he had a case of cold feet. However, he promised Sally that he would be ready by tomorrow. Before Sonic could finish talking, everyone saw Batbrain's silhouette. Sonic shouted at Batbrain to leave and threw a book at him. Once Batbrain reported back to his master, Robotnik gathered up his forces. Robotnik gave his troops a rousing speech about how they would take down the freedom fighters. He then ordered them to crash the wedding. Later that day, Sonic and Sally's wedding was underway. A priest named Willis asked if there were any objections to the wedding. Suddenly, someone shouted out an objection. Everyone turned around and saw Robotnik's SWATbots and Badniks invading the barn. Sonic joked about the SWATbots being from Sally's side of the family, which annoyed her. The SWATbots started shooting their lasers at everybody. Sonic quickly grabbed Sally and moved her to safety. Willis demanded that Robotnik's forces stop their attack within a holy sanctuary, but they ignored him. Willis nearly got shot, but Sonic saved him. Meanwhile, Robotnik's other Badniks invaded the barn. Robotnik ordered his SWATbots to secure the perimeter until he arrived. He soon showed up after Snively and his forces surrounded the barn. Meanwhile, Sonic was busy taking down several SWATbots and Badniks. Sonic beheaded some SWATbots with his sonic spin, but their numbers felt endless. He couldn't take them all on in such a small space and feared someone would get hurt. Sonic picked up Sally and ran out of the barn. However, he found that Snively and some SWATbots were waiting for them. Snively ordered the SWATbots to shoot at Sonic, but Sonic ran back inside the barn. Meanwhile, a SWATbot threatened Antoine at gunpoint. Suddenly, a sandbag fell on the SWATbot. Sonic called out to Antoine and then swung into action. Sonic tore off one of the SWATbot's arms and took out several SWATbots with it. He then threw the arm into a group of SWATbots and Badniks. Robotnik made his grand entrance, but he was surprised to see his forces defeated. He asked Sonic why he was standing at the altar and where Sally was. Sally called out to Robotnik from the scaffolding. She then cut the curtain loose, causing it to fall on Robotnik. Sonic bowed as everyone applauded for him. Robotnik asked why everyone was applauding at a wedding. Sonic turned around and told Robotnik to read the fine print. He pulled out the newspaper and revealed that the wedding was a stage play by the Knothole Village players. The next day, the freedom fighters were cleaning up the barn. Antoine read reviews about the play and told everyone that people loved it. Sonic said it was too bad that the play was their first, last, and only performance. Sonic sat on the edge of the stage and asked Sally if they weren't cut out for showbiz. Sally said she didn't know, but she considered Sonic to always be her leading man. She then sat next to Sonic and wrapped her arms around him. Sally asked him if the barn would be the perfect place for their wedding. Sonic quickly disappeared, causing Sally to question where he went. Sonic ran away and said Sally would have to catch him first before he married her. And that's it for this video of Sonic Lore History of Mobius. If you enjoyed it, then please comment, sub, and like for more. Thank you.